Yes? Thumbs up? Perfect. All right, listen. There's a lot of stories in the Bible, and I think that's what's hard about the Bible sometimes is there's just so much to it. Like it's a big book. It's not even a book. It's like a library of books. So there's a lot to it. And so there's stories that we all know, like Noah's Ark, which is fitting for today. There's what else we got? Like Adam and Eve is one that we all guess. David and Goliath. Like we all know certain stories. Like they're just part of the cultural consciousness or whatever. But for me, I'm pretty sure that like not that I don't want people to learn the Bible, but I think if like you were to learn one story from the Bible, it's not those. I think if you were to learn one story of the Bible, like if there was one story you could remember, you could think about, you're like, when I think about the Bible, this is what I think about. I think it would be the story of a guy named Simon, whose job was that of a fisherman. So Simon was a fisherman. And when I say fisherman, I do mean like gets his job. I don't mean he's the guy that goes out on Saturday mornings on the boat with his buddies in a six-pack and it doesn't matter if he catches anything. Like he's having a good time. Like not that kind of fishing. Like I'm sure he liked that too. I'm sure he'd prefer that. But he was the guy who like his job was fisherman. Like if it was today, they'd put him on a reality show on Discovery and exotic, a man who fishes. But that's who he was. He was a fisherman. He was a guy who, went on a boat. He would, navigate stars as they worked at night. So he'd have to be able to know the stars and he'd know tides and he would know, this weather patterns. And he was the kind of guy that always kind of, was kind of always tired. You meet those people that like they spend their whole lives doing, hard labor and like there's a little like you give them a hug and you're like, did I just hug like granite? That was this guy, Simon. Simon's just like the granite hug guy. Because Simon's entire life was having to work with his hands, having to work with his body, and having to be able to provide for his family. Because that's it. Either you provide for your family or you don't eat. And so he had a wife. He had his extended family living with him. At the very least, he's got a mother-in-law that we read a story about. And so, Simon, he has responsibilities. He has things he has to do, and that's just his job. And he did well at it. I don't know that he loved it necessarily, but he did well at it. He had his own business. He was his own boss. He worked with his brother. He and his brother had their own thing going on. They had some friends that either worked with them or worked alongside them. Maybe they had their own business. It's not totally clear, but he got to work with his brother, got to work with his friends, and that was just the life he lived. He was a normal, simple guy. And then everything changed for Simon the fisherman after he had a particularly terrible night fishing. Sometimes, I don't care how good you are. It doesn't matter how good you are at your job, how well you know things, how much you plan. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And so, Simon was out on this boat and fishing all night and, dropping the nets and pulling them in, dropping the nets and pulling them in, and there's just nothing. Just catching like old shoes or I don't know what he was catching, but it was not fish, right? And so in the morning, the thing about that kind of work is you don't just get to like get mad and go home. Like whether you catch a lot or you catch a little, you have to, take everything down and clean your nets and get everything ready for the next day. And that's not a task that's, horrible if you've got a huge catch. But if you've caught nothing, it's just this annoying thing because all you want to do is go home and go to sleep and pretend like it didn't happen and wake up the next day and hopefully do better. But Simon, the fisherman, had this terrible night and he had to get everything ready for the next day. And so he was cleaning his nets and suddenly like this commotion happened. It's early in the morning and all these people show up. Like on the beach where he and his brother and his friends are at, just trying to get ready. All these people show up and they're just trying to figure out like why are these people here this morning? What are they doing? Like there's got to be a reason for them to be here. And they see that they're all here and they find out that everybody's here to hear this new rabbi teach. This rabbi that's supposed to be like this different guy. He's not like the other rabbis because most of the rabbis in that world, they were like half politician, half religious leaders. Like the kind of guys like when they smiled, you didn't trust them. Why would you? You've got a lot of reasons not to trust him. And this guy was different. Like this new rabbi is supposedly, he's teaching different things. He's a different guy and everybody's out to listen to him. The beach that they were at, it got really crowded. I mean, it's like crazy amounts of people. And so the guy needed to figure out a way to communicate to them where they could all hear, and they don't have, a sound system. They don't have mics. They don't have amplification. And so, kind of just using the natural thing that they have, this rabbi's like, okay, well, if I can get in a boat and I can just get out a little bit onto the water, I've got an ability to at least be in front of everybody. I can talk loud and they can all listen to me. And so Simon is sitting there, cleaning up his nets, doing what he's trying to do, probably cursing to, under his breath the whole time about what a terrible night it was. And here comes this new rabbi guy who's like, hey, man, I got a favor to ask. Could I borrow your boat? And Simon, he looks down. And he's like, I don't know how long you're going to be. I've still got like another hour or whatever. So, yeah, like you can have it until I'm done, and then I'm going home. And the rabbi, says, thank you. And he goes and out to the sea, and he teaches and everything else. And of course, you can't help but hear. He probably wasn't paying that much attention, but he could hear some of what he was saying. And so, he finishes the teaching, finishes whatever he's doing. Everybody's happy. And the rabbi comes back, and he talks to Simon, and he says, hey, I want to say thank you to you for using the boat. And Simon's like, look, great, but I'm going home. I just want to leave. And he says, no, I want you to go out and just go out just a little bit, drop your net into the ocean or into the sea, into the water again. And that's just going to be my way of saying thank you, is I promise you'll be happy. And Simon's like, look, I don't know what you do for a living. I guess teach people stuff, but like we don't fish for that kind of fish. Like, they don't hang out in the morning. That's why we go out at night. That's why I'm cranky right now, because we didn't catch anything at night. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but I know I'm not going to do that. And so there's a little back and forth. And finally Simon's like, look, it was a terrible night. Maybe I can catch a little something. I guess it's worth it if I catch a little something. And so he, rows out, does what he does, and drops the nets. And it's interesting at this point of the story because, like, you and I don't interpret fisherman catches a bunch of fish as much of a miracle. Like, because that's sort of what fishermen are supposed to do, or else they would not be fishermen. They would do something else with their lives. But they caught so much fish that their nets broke. Just all the fish of the sea. Like we say, like, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Not that day. They were all in the boat. This miraculous catch of fish. And Simon realizes this guy is not, there's got to be something different about this guy, because none of this should have worked. This is a miracle. This guy must be from God somehow, and I don't know what I don't know what to do. And so he goes back to the rabbi, and he says, hey, that was amazing. I believe in you. I believe, like, I wanted, what can I do? Like, how can I incorporate what you're doing into my life? And the rabbi said, look, here's what I need you to do. Just follow me. I'm actually in the business for disciples. You can be one of those guys. I want you to follow me. And that's what happened. Now, you probably know that that's the story of Jesus. Jesus is the rabbi. I know, big twist ending. But it's interesting. These are like the first disciples that Jesus has. Some of the first disciples that Jesus has. And the guy in question is named Simon, and we know Simon better by the name Peter, because in the world that they lived in, they spoke different languages. And so at home, like in his home town, as a Jewish man, Simon was that was the word for, that's what you would call. When you kind of traveled, though, and people didn't speak that language, they spoke Greek, they would call, Simon Peter. And so that's just that. Like, so Simon is Simon some places and Peter other places, and we know him as the Apostle Peter. And that's the story of how Peter, meets Jesus and begins to follow him. And if you're aware of the Bible or Christianity at all, you know that Peter is a big deal. I mean, he is a very, very important person in the story of Christianity, a very important person in the story of Jesus. There's a lot of disciples. Like, there's more, if you try to sit down and count the disciples of Jesus in the Bible, like just trying to, copy and paste like the different people that follow him, it's really hard to do. It's really kind of hard to pin down, but it's, we're talking in the thousands, at the end of it, of people who follow Jesus in one way or another. And then, from that group of people, and Peter was one of those, then there's a much smaller group where there's 12. And that's usually what we think about with Jesus, is Jesus had 12 friends, or he had 12 disciples, 12 apostles, whatever. There's the 12 of them. And Peter was one of those 12. But Peter was not just one of those 12. Peter was also, there's a group that gets like extra special stuff that they see different things, and it's called the inner circle of Jesus, and there's 3 of those guys, and Peter's one of those. No matter no matter what you talk about, or like what amount of people we're talking about, there's, Peter's always there. He's always one of them. And Peter becomes somebody that thrives in that situation. Like, I don't know that I ever get the impression that Peter loves being a fisherman. I don't know that anybody loves their job, right? And maybe you did love it at first, or you did at some point, but I don't get the impression that that's a thing. And so I don't think Peter was all that heartbroken when Jesus said, "Look, I don't want you to be a fisherman anymore. I actually need you to stop fishing." It's like a prohibition. Like, this is like an instruction, a command, no more fishing. He has this like lovely little wordplay where he's like, "I don't want you to be a fisherman. I want you to be a fisher of men," because Jesus had the dad jokes too. And so tells him, "Hey, that's that. I want you to focus on my teaching and helping other people. That's what I want you to focus on. I want you to take care of the people that I want you to take care of. I don't want you to be this fishing guy anymore. I want you to be somebody who is like my right hand. That's what I want." And Peter's great with that, because this is better. And look, don't get me wrong, like it's really important that I just said that Peter had responsibilities. There's a story in the Bible about like Peter's mother-in-law being nearly dead, and she gets healed by Jesus because Peter is very obviously still taking care of this family of his. Like, he didn't just like up and leave his family. But he does completely change the way his life goes, because he's no longer somebody who is, fishing all the time. He is somebody who is with Jesus. And he becomes like his best self by following Jesus. He becomes a leader. He becomes somebody that can be depended on. He becomes somebody that like the other disciples look to, somebody that Jesus leans on. He becomes somebody to the point of getting a whole new name. He already has 2 names, but he actually gets a 3rd name. Jesus actually gives him a nickname, which is super cool. Like, I think it's super great that Jesus is handing these out. And he gives them the nickname of The Rock, which is a fantastic nickname. If you're going to have a nickname, The Rock is pretty cool, right? It's a pretty good one. And it's just a reflection that he's the dependable one. He is the rock of the group. Everybody looks to him. Everybody follows him. Everybody wants to be like him. Everybody is fine with him speaking for them. He becomes like the spokesman, essentially, of the group. And Peter, for years, like 2 or 3 years, it's hard to know exactly, but for a period of years, becomes his best self following Jesus. And it's this wonderful thing. Right up until the point when it all crashes down. You see, the end of Jesus' ministry was a lot. I know we talk about it. Like, we especially we're coming out of Easter, we're coming out of like Good Friday and everything, on the calendar. And we talk about how, Jesus arrested, Jesus betrayed, Jesus, he goes these trials that aren't real. They're not really trials. They're just, rubber stamping an execution. He ends up dying, and that's obviously tragic. And then, amazingly, we celebrated it last week. Jesus, comes back from the dead, and this is an incredible thing. But the thing about it is, like, for Peter, it's not incredible. Because we get to look at that whole thing from the outside looking in. We get to see, okay, Jesus is, he's arrested, and this happens, and that happens, and he raises from the dead, and, we can sing the songs and have an Easter egg hunt, and it's great. But for the people who are in it, it's not that way. Like, Peter had to come to grips with a lot of stuff. So the Last Supper, the last meal, we just took communion as a remembering that event, the last meal of Jesus. At the last meal that Jesus has with his disciples, he's trying to prepare them for what's to come. And he's telling them, guys, like, this is not going to be a good night for any of you. None of you are going to be your best selves tonight, right? Like, maybe you have been with me and you've been your best self with me, but you're not going to be your best self tonight. You're going to get scared. You're going to run away. All of you are going to have a rough time. All of you are going to betray me. And Peter doesn't like hearing that. Not just because, he wants to be a good friend. There's that part of it, but Peter has this ego about him. He has a very high view of himself. And he ends up telling Jesus, man, even if everybody else betrays you, and he says this in front of all the people that are like candidates for that, even if everybody else betrays you, I never would. That's Peter saying, even if all of your other friends are terrible, then they might be, I won't be. Like that, you can imagine how the other people at the table took that. They did not well. And it's just a reflection, again, it's a reflection of the ego that Peter has. And the problem with the ego is it doesn't last super long. Most people get humbled, and I don't just mean, Shedeur Sanders. Everybody, that's a great joke for people who watch the NFL. Unbelievable. That guy's an object lesson forever, guys. Like, don't get too full of yourself. You go in the 5th round to the Browns. Enjoy that. What was I saying? He's got an ego. And so he tells Jesus, I would never. And Jesus is like, dude, not only are you going to do it, you're going to do it 3 times tonight. That's how terrible you're going to be. And Peter doesn't believe it. And of course, you guys know he does. 3 different times he ends up betraying Jesus, claiming he doesn't know Jesus. Somebody comes up to him and is like, hey, you've got to be the guy who knows Jesus. You've got to be that. And Peter swears him down. He's not. I mean, it's over and over that happens. And, it's humiliating and it's emasculating, right? Like that he's not man enough to stand up with his friend. Like it's a terrible situation. And the thing about it is you ask, like, well, why would he do that? And the problem is Peter seems to be all over the place. Because you think, well, maybe he's afraid. But see, earlier in the night, this is great. Jesus gets arrested, and there's this whole, like, army of people. This whole group of people, like, guards and soldiers and everything else. And they're arresting Jesus. And Peter is like, well, I should just get in a fight with all of them. I should pull out a sword, and I should go attack the entire army. Stupid. But like somewhat courageous, right? We've all got that friend. A little more courage than sense. That's Peter. Like he was so committed to Jesus that he was willing to fight and die for him. So I don't know if it was, it's weird for that guy then to be, afraid. But what I think it was when Jesus did that, or when Peter did that, Jesus actually rebuked him. All the people that arrest him, he doesn't rebuke, he doesn't argue with, he doesn't yell at Judas, right? He doesn't yell at anybody. He yells at Peter for fighting for him. I'm pretty sure Peter in this moment, like he's got this ego and he thinks he's something, and they're at the table. I would never betray you. And Jesus says, you're going to. And then, Jesus says, don't fight. And Peter fights, and then he yells at Peter. And then later on, he betrays Jesus 3 times, just like he said. And at the end of the day, Peter has been humbled over and over and over, and he's not the guy he thinks he is. And everybody's seeing it, and he's humiliated. And guys, I got to tell you, shame is a powerful emotion. Because not even the resurrection of Jesus undid Peter's shame. Peter sees Jesus risen from the dead, a couple of times even. But he still has that shame. He's still just so embarrassed about what he's done. And so we get to the point of the story, right? All this is just leading up to this one moment. The story I want you guys to remember, okay? Like, better than David and Goliath, better than Noah's Ark, better than Adam and Eve. This is the part of the story we need to remember. Because shortly after Jesus raised from the dead, the Apostle Peter decides he doesn't want to be the Apostle Peter anymore. Peter the fisherman, who became Peter the rock, decides he wants to be Peter the fisherman again. And remember, Jesus had explicitly told him, don't do that. I don't want you to fish anymore. Don't do that. Peter decides, I want to do that. I want to go back to fishing. He doesn't do it because he loves fishing. He does it because he doesn't have other options. And he has decided that if he's not going to be an apostle anymore, and that's his decision, is I don't want to be an apostle anymore. If he has decided I don't want to be an apostle anymore, I don't have anything better to do than go back and be a fisherman. And so he says, well, I'm going to go back and become a fisherman again. I'm going to do the things Jesus told me not to do. I'm going to quit. And so one night he goes out to fish. He takes some of the other disciples with him because at the end of the day, they don't know what else to do. They look to him. He's Peter the Rock, right? They look to him for guidance and direction. And if he's going to go back and be a fisherman, I guess we'll go with him. And so he goes to fish one night, and he has a terrible night. I'm beginning to wonder if Peter was actually good at his job ever. Because the first night didn't catch anything. The last night doesn't catch anything. But he didn't catch anything. And it's another terrible, frustrating night. He's probably thinking like, oh man, am I rusty? Am I just like, what's going on? But they get to the morning, they get to the dawn. And they're going by on their boat, and they see a guy on the shore surrounded by a fire, and it just smells awesome because he's cooking breakfast. You know how that goes, like how good breakfast smells when you're tired, and it's great. So they kind of get closer to the shore, and the guy calls out, "Hey, have you caught anything?" When you know that this is Jesus in a second, and he's just like messing with him, it's so great. Have you caught anything? Oh, I love Jesus. Jesus is like, yeah, I'm going to make fun of you for being terrible at your job. You caught anything yet? Of course, he doesn't catch anything. And so he's like, no, I haven't caught anything. And he's like, why don't you try again? Just drop the nets one time. I promise you'll be happy about it. And Peter doesn't recognize what's happening, but he's starting to get an inkling because he's heard that before. And he drops the nets in, and it's the same thing. We don't hear that it's a miracle that a fisherman catches a bunch of fish. But they did. Drops the nets in. It's the wrong time of day. It's the morning. They had a terrible night. Exactly what happens. They've got more fish than they can even know what to do with. They can't even get the net in the boat. The Bible says they drag it behind the boat because that's all they can do. And they get to the beach, and Jesus just cooking breakfast, which is probably awesome. I mean, I don't know. I don't know a lot about Jesus cooking, but it feels like it'd be good. He's cooking breakfast. And Jesus cooks breakfast for everybody, but he really wants to have a conversation with one person. And that's, Simon the fisherman, who's no longer supposed to be a fisherman, who's fishing, Peter the Rock. He wants to talk to Peter. And it's interesting because he just asked him a question. He's like, hey, man, do you love me? Like, you said you were following me, right? Do you love me? And Peter says, well, of course I do. And Jesus says to Peter then, okay, well, do your job. I told you I wanted you to take care of people. Take care of people. What are you doing fishing? And they go a little bit longer. He's like, hey, Peter, do you love me? And Peter's like, yeah, absolutely I do. He's like, cool, do your job. I told you. I wanted you not to go fishing. I wanted you to take care of people. The third time, Peter gets annoyed because that's how, because he's got an ego on him. Do you love me? And Peter's like, of course I do. What are you talking about? Well, you quit. He says, do your job. The symmetry is beautiful. Peter denies 3 times, and Jesus gives him an opportunity to affirm his faith 3 times. But I love this story because as much as I want to make fun of Peter over and over, and I do, I always say Peter's always my favorite character in the Bible because I see myself in him. It's hard to look sometimes in the Bible and see the people who are really awesome and be like, oh, I could be that. No, I know myself well enough to know that's not me. Peter's a different story. I can be Peter. At the end of the day, I can do that. And the fact of the matter is we all can get to a place in our lives where we are like Peter was in that moment, right? Where life has gone off the rails and everything is terrible. And we feel horrible about ourselves and we get wildly insecure and we don't know what to do. And then we just want to quit. And we just want to find something else to do. And I don't care if we're talking about like a job or a marriage. I don't know if we're talking about like a family. I don't know if we're talking about religion. There's always that temptation where life gets hard and things are bad and we just want to quit. And I love in this story the response of Jesus. Because Peter and the disciples didn't ask for Jesus to be there. They didn't even consent for him to be there. Jesus just stubbornly refused to leave. Peter can run away all he wants. Jesus isn't going anywhere. Much as we try to run away from God, God is stubbornly unwilling to let us run away. And so Peter is trying to quit. He's trying to be done. And Jesus is on the shore like, hey, man, you want some breakfast? He's going nowhere. And what that tells us is that no matter how badly Peter messed up, the opinion that Jesus had of Peter was unchanged by Peter's mistakes. Like, we might think, okay, well, Jesus is going to be real angry. He's going to be upset. He might not want to be an apostle, whatever. That's not it. His opinion of Peter is the same. I love the symmetry in the story. The first time Jesus meets Peter, he performs a miracle. When Peter tries to quit, he performs the exact same miracle. And the lesson is so easy to see that a blind man could see it. Jesus was the same at the beginning as he was at the end. Peter might not have been, but Jesus was. And so here's what I want us to talk about, or what I want us to take away this morning. Like, I don't care if this is the first time you've been to this church. I don't care if this is like the 10,000th time you've been in this church. It's all the same. The beauty of the gospel is it's not different for any of us. All of us are beloved by God. All of us are made in his image, and we are so very valuable. The creator of this universe made you on purpose, and he made you the way you are on purpose. You are absolutely unconditionally loved, and your mistakes and your mess ups and your attempting to run away in no way, shape, or form changes that. Much as you might want to run away from God, you're not going to quite get it done. And so our hope and our trust, our faith as Christians, is in the goodness of a God who loves us on our worst days as much as he loves us on our best. Simon the fisherman accepting Christ at the beginning, Peter the apostle trying to quit, God did not change through any of that. He still loved him, he still called him, and he was still for him. This morning, this is the week after Easter. This is a special Sunday for us, whether we're outside or inside. It's a special Sunday for us. And I just wanted to share, look, there's a lot of things in the Bible. I just wanted to share, this is the best story in the Bible. This is the gospel in one phrase. And so many Christians will say so many things, and so many of those things are really dumb. This is the heart of Christianity. That no matter how bad we might be, no matter how bad we might feel, no matter how much we might try to run away, the God of this universe made us, loves us, and is with us. And so today we've got a lesson to leave. Usually we do sermon series. There's not a sermon series this week. This is just what we're talking about today. Today our lesson is going to be behind me. This is the whole thing. If you half asleep for this whole thing, cool, great. This is it. This is the summation of what we're talking about. God is always with us. He never leaves us, even if we sometimes deserve it. God is always with us. He never leaves us, even if we sometimes deserve it. We're going to sing this song, and this song is like an invitation song, and what this song is kind of like, we build into the service an opportunity to think about where you are. I don't know where anybody is. I don't know what anybody thinks about Christianity or whatever, but the Bible teaches that when we want to accept Christ, that we should repent and be baptized. That sounds like two things. It's just one. In repentance, we commit to changing our lives, the orientation of our lives, to turn our backs on who we used to be without God and to look forward to a future with God. Baptism's a picture of that. Just as Christ was dead, buried, and raised, the gospel of what he's done for us. In baptism, we too die, are buried, are raised to a new life where we align ourselves with Christ. We got a baptism full of water. We can do it anytime. If that's a decision you want to talk about, let's talk about it. If you're already an immersed believer in Christ, you're looking for a perfect church home, I promise you it's not here. But we do serve a perfect God. We want to connect, we want to call, we want to cultivate, we want to meet new people, share the gospel, grow up while we do it. We want to be people who trust in a God who loves us unconditionally no matter what. We're going to sing a song, and then we'll do some other announcements and stuff like that. That's the end.